uses Qualcomm's 4G chips in all its high-end phones. But it'll soon switch to 5G, turning to China-made chips because of export controls on U.S. companies providing advanced tech to China. Meanwhile, smartphones as a whole are facing an industry-wide downturn. Shipments are on track to hit their lowest point in a decade.
We had a couple really good years during the pandemic when everyone was buying new phones, upgrading, and now we've entered the downturn, and so cyclically there's just less demand, right? And at some point that will turn around, that will improve.
In August, Qualcomm reported weaker than anticipated revenue for Q3, and it's planning another round of layoffs after letting go of 415 people in June. It employs around 51,000 people.
The macroeconomics, I think, is not unique to Qualcomm. A lot of companies have been right-sizing their business, and we're no different than the rest of our peers.
With uncertainty in the smartphone market, Qualcomm has shifted much of its focus to chips for other smart devices. Chief among them, cars.
So that's our brightest spot in our Qualcomm differentiation strategy. In a period of, I'll say, 3 to 4 years, we have significantly increased our presence. We started in the automotive a long time ago, but it was a very small business.
That's something that's taking time, but these design wins are indicative of a future. They do create more predictability in revenue, and the company is seeing more and more of the world's largest automakers select its technology for at least part of their connected automotive stack.
Qualcomm's digital chassis powers cloud-connected video and audio, advanced driver assistance systems, and things like face recognition for automatic doors. It's in cars like the new Cadillac Escalade IQ and models from BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Stellantis, Hyundai, General Motors, JLR, and Sony Honda Mobility.
The interior of our cars are starting to look a lot more like our other consumer electronic devices, our phones and our laptops. And then on top of that, the automakers are starting to tie a lot of all those thousands of discrete chips together into sort of more complex systems to add assisted driving and infotainment and digital cockpit. The problem is the auto market moves very slowly relative to cell phones.
Qualcomm is also diversifying into the connectivity of things, like virtual or augmented reality headsets.
This is our AR2 Gen 1. So this chip is the foundational technology, the center of AR glasses.
We're the partner of choice of Meta. We have been working with Microsoft. We've been working with Google and Samsung. So we believe that's going to be an opportunity. It's hard to time it. When everybody's going to buy their glasses, but we know that that's going to be the next computing platform for sure.
Well, I think their chipsets in AR and VR will become important because Apple will make this product commercial. But I do think once Apple goes mainstream, the demand will flow down, just like AirPods. There will be 1,000 other wearables.
And Qualcomm is also trying to break into the competitive world of central processing units for PCs, taking on server giants like Intel and AMD. In 2021, Qualcomm bought CPU startup Nuvia for $1.4 billion, although ARM sued Qualcomm in 2022, saying it only licensed its architecture to Nuvia, not its new owner. Still, Qualcomm says its ARM-based processors will be in PCs by 2024.
I'm kind of tempted to dismiss that as something that it's going to be too hard to crack. But I think with AI and generative AI, if that becomes a feature that consumers really want in their laptops, then Qualcomm actually has a really good solution. And so maybe this is the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Qualcomm to break into the PC market.
Qualcomm's newest announcements do show big new focus on enabling devices for generative AI.
Pay attention to this for Apple as well.
We talk often about this hybrid AI. You're going to run things on the device because sometimes the device has unique things in real time from you, or you can give the cloud a head start. But at the end of the day, I think the power of combining the cloud with the device is very big.
With NVIDIA's incredible performance since ChatGPT came out in November, the big push toward AI is no surprise. But Aman says it's been in the works far longer.
We had the foresight to see that AI will become very significant about 10 years ago. So over a decade, we've been developing capabilities for you to be able to run AI as pervasive as everything else you run on your phone.
In May, Microsoft announced plans for offline AI models that'll run on Qualcomm's Snapdragon processors. And in July, Meta announced its ChatGPT competitor Llama 2 will run on Qualcomm chips on phones and PCs in 2024.
The company's biggest opportunity is to figure out what are those AI applications, whether it's tied to augmented reality, whether it's tied to intelligent vehicles, whether it's tied to next generation gaming, whether it's tied to productivity tools and apps. Its ability to put chipsets into these devices that can handle and process those different workloads, and of course, being able to monetize that.
So far, though, large language models have run off server farms filled with NVIDIA GPUs that can handle their huge computational and data needs. For now, the business of on-device AI is unproven.
Is Qualcomm going to be able to upsell a premium for each one of its licensees and each one of its chipsets for having these advanced AI capabilities? I think that particular answer will be the biggest determinant in just how successful Qualcomm can be in AI.
But even with uncertainty around diversifying use cases for Qualcomm's tech, analysts say the company's long-term outlook remains stable.
More and more things are going to have chips in them. We're going to connect more and more things to the internet. It's going to take forever, but it will happen. Cars will be the most visible example of that. But it'll be machines and light posts and power tools and Coke cans. All those things will eventually get connected, and Qualcomm can participate in that growth pretty nicely.
The numbers need to catch up in some areas. Longer term, though, it's hard to bet against a company that provides the technology that's in just about every handset and every device that we use every day.
I wanted to talk about Qualcomm to head into the conversation about Huawei, because actually they are, believe it or not, somewhat similar. All right. So with Qualcomm, you're talking about two different aspects to them. So the first of which is what I'm going to kind of call their consumer chips business. So this is the Snapdragon, all right? This is what they're putting in cars. When they talk about on-device AI, you are talking about the brains, okay? The CPU, GPU, I/O, neural net, etc. That all fits into one specific chip called SoC, or system on a chip. All right? Huawei is starting to play in that space. But that's not what Huawei was known for. Huawei was known for telecom. All right? Essentially for modems. All right? For communication. So you're talking about big infrastructure, which, by the way, Qualcomm sells into too, along with competitors like Nokia, Ericsson, etc. All right? So this is a different beast than just what you're talking about for your phones. All right? You're talking about setting up like big transceivers, on cell phone towers. Qualcomm has a place there. Huawei got its start there. Now, this is what created the problem. Huawei has a connection through a few of their directors and their founder to an organization in China called the PLA, which stands for the People's Liberation Army. It's literally the military of China. All right? That's why the US made a very big deal about moving away from Huawei, to the point that the US has security and intelligence sharing agreements with multiple other countries. The US has threatened these countries and said, we will not share intel with you if your national data infrastructure is secured by Huawei products. The concern has always been that some of these Huawei products have backdoors that enable the PLA, again, the Chinese military, to directly access cellular networks. Reminder, we're not talking about your phone. We're not talking about your iPad, your tablet, your car. We are talking about the backbone of your infrastructure, which all phones, all cars, all tablets connect to. All right? That's the issue at hand. It's not Huawei building a phone. It was Huawei building essentially the infrastructure to connect your phones. That was the problem. Is this the stupidest tinfoil stuff? No, I'll get to that in a second. I'll go back to NVIDIA. People calling NVIDIA fraud. It's the stupidest fucking thing I've heard. There's numerous bear cases in NVIDIA. We'll cover them, in fact. but calling them a fraud is stupid. All right. So that's why the US has had so many problems against Huawei. About 3 years ago, all right, about 3 years ago, the US took a rare decision. They moved Huawei to the quote entity list. The entity list, it's a list of companies that basically US and companies that do significant business in the US cannot associate with. When Huawei got put on that, here's what happened. At the time, there was a brand called High Silicon. Okay, HI Silicon. All right. Most of you have never heard of them. B Hood has, because he knows where I'm going with this. High Silicon sells a bunch of products, particularly phones, processors, etc. High Silicon is Huawei. All right? That's their brand name. If you are buying a phone, you're not buying a Huawei phone, you're buying a High Silicon phone. High Silicon is a division of Huawei. It's owned by Huawei. And that's what brings us to the Kirin processor. So over the weekend, you may have heard a lot of news about how China has managed to circumnavigate US trade restrictions in the semiconductor space and produced an advanced 7-nanometer processor. They have done this without the use of EUV manufacturing. They have no access to EUV tools. And as far as everyone is concerned, they do not have an EUV replacement right now. First of all, for China, congratulations. Producing a 7-nanometer chip with or without EUV is an impressive accomplishment. Intel was struggling for years to do it. So if China successfully did it, congrats. All right, take a bow. That's impressive. Here's the question about whether they did it or not. When they got moved to the entity list, they lost access to TSMC. TSMC could no longer manufacture leading edge chips because originally Huawei was a customer for 5-nanometer. But now, High Silicon, i.e. Huawei, has a phone, has a processor, the new Kirin, which is supposedly 7-nanometer. So it is worse than what they had 2 years ago. Here's the interesting question. Did they really do it? There is a theory going around. I don't know how true it is. I don't have a viewpoint on it. But specifically calling out that this processor may have been from a stockpile of chips they originally had purchased from TSMC 2 or 3 years ago when Huawei knew they were about to get banned. And no one knows yet for sure. We're going to find out. By the way, producing a 7-nanometer chip without the usage of EUV, the real problem is what's their yield? Just because they can produce a chip, basically, how much of that wafer did they have to cut away? How much of it did they have to cut away? And no one knows that. Personally, I'm willing to bet they legitimately did this. I'm willing to bet they probably pulled it off. And that's the problem with a lot of the restrictions. All right? We've restricted China for technology before, and they've still managed to advance their technology. The harder we make it for them to get access to, quote, advanced semiconductor technology, they will work harder at getting it. Nothing is true and everything is possible. Great book. Yep. It's going to be wild to see in the future. But that's the Huawei story. They have a phone that came out, and people are saying, look, they're equal to the West. It's a 7-nanometer process. All right? It is a slower, more behind process than the iPhone that came out 3 years ago. iPhone now is at 3 nanometers, with the expectation the next 2 years it moves to 2 nanometers. Okay, so this is probably about 3 generations behind. If you go 7-nanometer, a 6-nanometer, a 5-nanometer, and then a 3-nanometer. All right, talking roughly 3 generations behind. I'm with you, B-Hood. So that's the Huawei story. And Pitaska, is your ASML shares in jeopardy? I assume ASML is fine. It's the most difficult manufacturing process on Earth, in particular, EUV. No one believes China has EUV technology. Even if China procured an actual machine, it takes an army to keep that thing running. And they don't have access necessarily to the software. So I would assume ASML is fine. The fact that ASML, by the way, is not Europe's biggest company is, I'll always laugh at that. Backdoor Bob, 3 generations, how many years? Probably 5. Probably 5. The problem is, Backdoor Bob, all right, right now, if they don't get access to EUV lithography technology, no one knows how they economically go to the next level. Like, EUV technology took over 20 years to develop and commercialize. And then once it was, quote, commercialized, it took TSMC about 2+ years to figure out how to actually do it at volume and scale. Mainly the issue seen, Bob, is that if they can produce smaller chips without using EUV, then the expectation is they're doing so many passes with a DUV tool, deep ultraviolet lithography, that the yield turns to shit and you're throwing away most of the wafer. So at that point, you may be able to produce a chip. You're not economically viable. You cannot compete against a fab running EUV tooling. China builds 10 Gen 5 fighter jets in the time it takes the US to build one. Quality, not quantity. And in this case, there's physics issues here. It's not as straightforward as jets. Gaseous Clay, this is a good question. There are numerous chips on the smartphone. Right now, we're really talking about the AP, the application processor. There is a second chip that they have been successful for, which is the 5G modem. There was a breakthrough suggesting that Huawei was now able to no longer rely on using Qualcomm modems because they were able to design their own modem. Something, by the way, Apple has had problems doing. Which goes to show, and they talked about it in the video, you can take the team out of Intel, i.e. Apple acquired the modem team from Intel. You can't take the Intel out of the team. So we're talking about the AP, the application processor. By the way, when you talk about smartphones or tablets, you do not hear people talk about CPUs, GPUs, etc. You talk about APs, application processors, because they are, quote, SoC, system on a chip. So they tend to have inbuilt a CPU, a GPU, all in one piece of silicon. So I thought that was kind of important. There was a lot of conversation about Huawei, about their phone, about it showing the uselessness of Western sanctions against China. And I am not a fan of the majority of the newer sanctions. I think if China wants to buy NVIDIA GPUs, I have no problem with that. The only restriction, I think, which technically makes sense right now from both a strategic and a logic standpoint, is the EUV restriction. Keep them away from EUV for now, that's fine. Keep them, because that basically guarantees they're going to be behind a few generations. And if you're wondering why would I support that, it's because China had no problem banning US internet giants early on from access to their market as a competitive issue. Fuck them. You can steal the entire design of an NVIDIA H100. You can't manufacture it. Unless you have EUV tools, you can't manufacture it. Doesn't matter. Would China even be willing to pay the premium on NVIDIA right now? Yes. Yes. Case in point, the breakthrough being discussed right now is the idea that SMIC, so Shanghai Manufacturing or Manufacturing International Corporation. Either way, SMIC is China's version of quote TSMC. They have been able to produce a 7 nanometer chip. We don't even know the yield on it. The H100 is a 4 nanometer process node. So that's 2 generations ahead. But Spencer, remember, the value proposition behind H100s and advanced semiconductors, particularly for AI applications, is the more of them you have, the less energy required to train models, the less time required to train models. That's why Jensen always says the argument, the more you have, the cheaper it is. He's actually right. It's simple. Create a B tier A100, then sell it to China for the same price. Oh, wait, that already happens. Yep. China is not always in it for the profits. Titan Point is correct. Semiconductor manufacturing in particular is now national security. Semiconductor Manufacturing International Court. That's what I thought it was, yeah. But China would absolutely be willing to pay the premium for NVIDIA chips. Literally everyone is. Everyone is. $52 billion semiconductor bill isn't that much. It's a lot. It's a good amount, right? It's a good amount. Healthy. Healthy. Give me liquidity. If we have inflation, why is the Dixie at 104? Because the Dixie is actually less about the American dollar and more about every other competitive currency. And right now, the US is still the strongest position. I mean, literally, the argument as to why the US is facing, quote, imminent recession, people keep throwing out China and Europe, which are good arguments, by the way. I ain't shitting on you for that. It's actually good arguments. But that gives you credence to why the US dollar is probably doing pretty well. Do we care about any earnings today? No. No. Do we have a schedule for the week on earnings? I'm pretty sure this week, like, nothing matters on earnings. It's felt like the longest earnings season of your life. Oh, it's going to start back up soon, by the way. Yeah, let's see what earnings are this week. Kroger, Zscaler, DocuSign, Restoration Hardware, GameStop. By the way, GameStop's not doing an earnings call. That takes balls. I think next week's a little more spicy. Yeah, next week we have Adobe and then Casey's. Next week's even worse. You have Adobe. Oh, Mexican cartel, please don't murder me. A lot of shit goes. A lot of shit goes. CVS really just gave up all of its gains this morning. What a bitch. Oracle's had a really good day. Love to see it. You'll love to see it. All right, guys. I started talking about it this morning. Spoke very briefly on it. I do want to talk even more about NVIDIA. Because seriously, fuck it. By the way, this guy, nobody special. All right. He's a content creator. I disagree with what he's doing, but he puts out good content. Right? He does put out good content. I disagree with him completely. All right? Just because he just learned who CoreWeave is doesn't mean everyone else didn't know who the fuck they were. Some people were paying attention. All right? Is Zscaler today? Yeah, Zscaler is actually today. Zscaler is VPNs for corporate. Super expensive. They've had rapid growth. I don't know if that growth continues. This is as growthy of a growth company as you could see. I assume that if you allowed true consolidation in cybersecurity, I assume these guys get acquired. Maybe not for $24 fucking billion. That might be a little insane. Palo Alto so far. Palo Alto's a great company. I mean, Enza, you can't believe everything CoreWeave is doing is legal. What are they doing? Go ahead. Tell me what they're doing. Tell me what CoreWeave is doing. Go on. What is CoreWeave doing? They are weaving some cores. Weaving using the cores. Duh. Yep. Like, what's the crime? Keep in mind, if you want to talk bearish cases for both CoreWeave and NVIDIA, I am all ears. Getting loans with H100s to buy more H100s. All right. What's illegal about that? What's the crime? What's the crime? How is what they're doing any different from a TikToker getting a mortgage on a rental property and then using their excess money to get another mortgage on a rental property? That's the exact same thing, right? Reminder, Enza, here is what the people who are talking about the CoreWeave and NVIDIA fraud situation, and let's chat just so you understand, they're all fucking wrong and morons. All right? Seriously, they are all criminally wrong at this point. All right? Here's what's happening, though. NVIDIA is not loaning them the money. This is not a closed loop. All right? Blackstone led a debt financing round. All right? A debt financing round for CoreWeave because they wanted more capital to build out their business. Their business is renting out GPUs to customers. All right? They secured that debt through the use of GPUs. NVIDIA is not a part of this transaction. NVIDIA did not give them money to do this. Right? Suchi is correct. Worst case, Blackstone loses some money and gets 100 H100s instead. Yep. The issue isn't with NVIDIA, but it's CoreWeave. Got it. So would it make you feel better if CoreWeave went through this transaction and it was unsecured debt, i.e. they just borrowed $2.3 billion, right? What's the difference between them having a loan backed by GPUs versus a loan backed by nothing? Is there a difference? Uranium, can we explain the bear case for NVIDIA? Yeah, the bear case is both competition and then, more importantly, channel stuffing. That they are going to overproduce, overship into inventory, and then face a big digestion cycle, which they have had happen basically twice in the last 5 years alone. It will eventually happen again. That's the bear case. Real easy. A loan backed by GPU. I know, right? I mean, imagine this. You have companies with loans backed by nothing, but CoreWeave says our asset is our GPUs. And the underwriter said, fine, we'll take that as collateral. I mean, literally, what you are talking about is absolutely not illegal. All right. I just want to make sure it's clear. It's not illegal. It's not even shady. It is literally not even shady. It sounds shady to charlatans who got melted on short positions on NVIDIA who bitch about it. Yep. Sam LeDuc was short NVIDIA about $200 publicly. The kid who wrote the big long thing who doesn't understand accrual-based accounting or the differences between services and chips, right? He was short NVIDIA at $304. All right? You are listening to people who got melted on their short positions, but guess what? Now they're talking fraud, CoreWeave, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Blackstone has done shadier deals all over the... All right, what's the crime? Right? Right? I mean, wait till you hear what our government's done, right? Yeah. Just because Blackstone's involved doesn't mean shit is crime. It only sounds that way to charlatans. Yep, Tincture's like, existing, those fuckers. Yep. Now, here's the fun part. Watch me shit on CoreWeave now. This is fun. This is fun. CoreWeave is going to fit right into the area as, believe it or not, Supermicro. Mark my words. All right? The real issue here is CoreWeave's business model is dependent on companies requiring additional AI capacity. Here's the cool thing, all right? If you're renting out GPUs, I made the comment earlier, the more you have, the cheaper it is from both electricity and processing time to run and create the large language models, which are all the rage. And by the way, you can replace large language models with video-based models, picture-based models, facial recognition, voice identification, all that shit. You need a lot of compute power. If you're a company like, if you and I are starting up our own business like CoreWeave, and we want to compete, here's the problem. If we land a big customer who wants to train a large model, and they're like, we need 10,000 of your GPUs, because that's the optimal amount of compute power, so it will take us a certain amount of time, we're willing to pay X. If you don't have 10,000 and you only have, say, 5,000, you may not get the deal. Because running it on half as many GPUs may take more than twice as long. It's weird math. It's weird, non-linear math. These large models. All right? So CoreWeave has to essentially buy out as much infrastructure as they can. If you want a bear case against CoreWeave, it's very, very easy. They are raising money and building itself in a mania period, in an absolute speculative bubble. That's the truth. God's honest truth. And they don't have pricing power. I promise you. They do not have the pricing power. 2 or 3 years from now, when AI hardware goes through a correction cycle and everyone has access to it, CoreWeave is not going to be in a good financial position. They're not. They're not. I would go long Microsoft, Amazon, or Google any day of the week, twice on Sundays, over CoreWeave. Just like I've said, I would go long NVIDIA before I ever went long Supermicro. Even though Supermicro trades at a much, much lower PE, look at the margins, baby. The second there's a digestion cycle, Supermicro's margins go down a lot faster than NVIDIA's. Reddit swap. Also, they don't have all the expertise and integrations hyperscalers have. Enza says they did the same thing with crypto mining before and had to sell their cards at a loss. Yep. That's the digestion cycle. So that's why when people said, what's the bear case for NVIDIA? Is it, quote, overvalued? No. No. When people say, but is their demand real? Did you not pay attention to what happened to AMD today when they basically called out the growth they are seeing, or Asus Tech calling out a doubling in AI? No. The problem is how long the uptick lasts for demand. There is a digestion cycle ahead. My best guess, NVIDIA's got about 3 to 4 more quarters where they're going to keep beat, raise, beat, raise, beat, raise. At some point after one of those beat raises, the stock will not go up. People will say the digestion cycle is about to start. And then all of a sudden, NVIDIA will have about 3 quarters where they post year over year revenue declines. And then a new digestion cycle will start and they'll go back up. That's literally how it works. Spencer, I will murder you. People just hate Blackstone because they quietly touch every intimate part of your life without you really knowing it. They own Bumble, Spanx, Legoland, retirement homes, and a ton of apartment blocks. For those that don't know, yeah, that's what asset managers do. They buy stocks. So calls, and then puts. Yep. That's a cycle. That's the cycle. So yeah, I have nothing positive to say right now about the people who are so broadly talking mad shit about CoreWeave and NVIDIA. You are listening to charlatans who are making shit up. You don't have to be bullish on the companies involved. No, I'm not bullish on CoreWeave. I'm telling you right now, I'm not. No. Why would I sign a contract with them when Microsoft's available? At this point, this is flex GPU capacity, and the day there is a digestion cycle, this company is the first to get punished. Mark my words. The misunderstanding is that they don't control the direction of those companies towards a greater agenda or something. That's just one. Yeah, agreed. You thought CoreWeave sold their computing to Microsoft. Microsoft is one of their customers, yes, because Microsoft is trying to get its hands on every fucking piece of AI equipment they can for their own customers. Yes. But at some point, Microsoft will have enough infrastructure, they will not use CoreWeave. But yeah, the real thing is that there's a shortage of GPUs. And the shortage of GPUs is actually caused by packaging capacity. So when people say, is the demand real? Yes, it's real. TSMC is investing between $2.7 to $3 billion to expand out chip on wafer on substrate capacity. They would not do that if they didn't think this was lasting a bit longer. But yeah, CoreWeave sold a portion. CoreWeave is not sold out. This whole NVIDIA is fraud cope thing honestly makes you sad. When you play the market, the faster you can accept that you were wrong, the better off you'll be. I agree. Suchi, which is why you think Blackstone is in a way buying at the top of the H100 peak. Well, they invested in a debt round, right? CoreWeave's a good company for the time. They're well positioned at the time. Yeah. But the people who keep saying it's, quote, creative accounting, they don't know accounting. They don't. There's much better threads than anyone that I've written about basically how the original analyst is so fucking wrong. All right? And again, the semiconductor analysts are destroying these people behind the scenes. Remember, one of the cool things about semiconductor as an investment group is there are a lot of good insiders, a lot of good resources, people who treat this shit seriously, who do excellent shit. Excellent shit. And not one of them are worried about, oh, the CoreWeave deal, oh, creative accounting. No. All of them are worried about how long the upcycle is for NVIDIA with AI. And by the way, all of them seem to think at least 2 more quarters. At least 2 more quarters. Oh, neat. It's a frog. Let's get back to the real news. When is GME's earnings, by the way? They're not doing earnings call. I know that much. I know that much. Wednesday. Ugh. Jay, I can't acknowledge that it feels a bit eerie when you learn activist investors are touching your favorite products. I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm just saying I see where some speculation comes from. Spencer, who's the activist investor we're talking about? I'm sorry, what? Are you accusing Blackstone or BlackRock of being an activist investor? Spencer, I feel like sometimes when you get bullied, there's reason for it. Black Pebble. Yeah, they're very passive. And by the way, thank God they're passive. If they were an activist investor, holy shit. Think of how much voting capacity they have. It would be tremendous. But yeah, Spencer, I think you're just saying you see where some speculation comes from. No, the speculation comes from the fact that they were short from $200 to $300 on Nvidia, and it's $480. They got fucking melted and made shit up. They are slightly more intelligent than AMC, GME, and Bloodbath and Beyond investors. In fact, let me remove GME investors from that. AMC and Bloodbath and Beyond investors are only slightly dumber than some of the people posting these big, long NVIDIA as a fraud theme. It's because we know those people got melted, so now it's fraud. You think Blackstone is involved in decisions? Absolutely not. No. Spencer, the reason Blackstone buys that shit, well, BlackRock in particular, is their role managing passive funds and retirement accounts. And that's why they're passive. They take huge positions in companies so you and I can buy ETFs, mutual funds, 401ks, pension plans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they don't vote. Think what happens if they voted. Think about it for a second. Because look at all the different positions they own. They could sit there and push for board changes to remove anyone who's remotely positive about oil and gas, for example. Or they could start like trying to vote out directors at tobacco companies, right? Yeah, they own shares because of ETFs. Yep, Suchi's correct, per usual. And Mo is correct, as per usual. All right, guys, less than 2 minutes to go in today's market. And I will stick around for Zscaler. Look at the SPY melt. Oh, down a mighty 0.4% today, by the way. Which is impressive when you looked at bonds. The 30-year and 10-year, this is the price of the bond, meaning the yield's the inverse. Remember that. Why you do the SPY, yeah. Don't several states prohibit their pensions from investing in BlackRock funds because of their ESG activism? Yeah, BlackRock makes some ESG funds available. The weird thing is it kind of goes back to my viewpoint on unions, right? Yeah, promo Nadezi. Dollar up, yields up, NASDAQ up as well. Today is weird. Today is weird. Yeah, they definitely softened the ESG shtick, which they should. Listen, if Should a fund have the right to make a specific fund available that says, we will not vote, we will not support tobacco, we will not support oil and gas, blah, 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 blah. Yes, that's fine. That's what democracy looks like. That's what capitalism looks like. All right? Counterpoint to that is, then should the fund exist that's able to not own Bud Light, Disney, and Target? Yes. As long as you are communicating to investors so that they know what they can buy and don't buy, that's fine. That's where it gets interesting. I think when you have states or employers that then restrict your ability to enter into these funds, and they have the ability to right now, that's where it gets a little creepy, I'd say. All right, guys, time. And I am assuming the Bears, the Bears win. Look at that. No one trusts the market today. But yeah, the wild thing today was not the SPY. It's not the NASDAQ, which ended up. Its small caps got absolutely fucked. I actually missed my opportunity to talk about Lulu. Lulu did very well, by the way. Lulu did very well. All right. My pension should have the right to YOLO. Yep. Lulu's earnings, if you read underneath the top level, they've identified their path to growth, predominantly international. All right. Plus men. Don't forget the men. Their gross margins outperformed expectations, and they cut down on their inventory big time. That was one of their big drags. They were also facing inventory issues. Lulu did very well last week. Very, very well. That's why the stock's breaking a little bit upward. And that makes sense. How's Steph for Lulu? They did not call out specifically as bad. They said it's happening, yeah. But they beat margin guidance, so they were obviously not blaming it too much. Ice Cream God King seems like an all-around solid as fuck. It is. It is. They have a really clean balance sheet. They don't have a debt problem. They have great margins. The biggest problem with Lulu will come down to valuation and its position within it's consumer cyclical. You are dependent on consumers still preferring Lulu product year after year. Like, what's that look like? To me, they are less secure than, say, Apple, but it is an incredible company. You liked them, and then I ruined it for you with the name of the company. Sorry, had to. And even Donkey, that was very instructive on Qualcomm. NVIDIA better not rest on its laurels as the company du jour, yeah. You just checked Wingstop. I never went short them, but it turns out I was right. Just timing wrong. Yeah, it's still trading, by the way. This is trading more expensive than NVIDIA. What makes Qualcomm's NPUs? I assume that's what, neural processing units? What makes them special? Qualcomm is probably up there in the top 2 for ARM processor designers. It's them and Apple. They're considered the best at it. It's chicken AI. It should be more expensive than it. Fuck off. All right, let's check out Zscaler. Zscaler is the only earnings that I know of today that actually matters. Don't know if it's real. Them competing with Apple is a concern? No. Apple only sells their chips into Apple phones, which means every top-line Android phone is a potential customer for Qualcomm. Anyone following Z Fox? Never heard of them. I guess I have GitLab, yeah. This is ZFox, by the way. Zero Fox Holdings. Low volume. 123 million. Yeah, I don't care about these guys. At least they're not diluting the shit out of people. But yeah, I never heard of. Interesting. If they're good, they'll get acquired. Zscaler got a green boner. Ooh, looks like they did. Any thoughts on GitLab earnings tonight? No. Watch for Google to buy more of them. Oh, there's GitLab. Identical boner. What I mean by that is look at the insider purchases and sales. All right. You never want to see a CEO sell out. I assume he has another pocket of shares. But keep this in mind. You keep seeing these purchases on GitLab. GV 2021 GP LLC. GV is Google Ventures. Google keeps buying a bunch of GitLab at prices of $36 to $34, $29 to $30, $27 to $29. It's currently trading at, wow, about to be 52. Asana is hard as fuck too. Ooh. Yep, it must have had good earnings too. Joy Toki. Google made some, like, a lot of people believe Google's going to try to acquire them at some point. Yeah, it's what GitLab is a potential competitor to GitHub. GitHub was acquired by Microsoft. Google making a good investment? Impossible. Salty promo is the best promo. Promo's not wrong. Take care, still cooking. Till tomorrow. Yeah, Caffeine, it does look like we're getting more companies with good earnings. Looks like pretty convincing beats on both EPS and revenue. Guiding up billings for the year, not bad. Guiding up EPS, good. Guiding up, so both full year and Q1. Got it. Bears never get paid. Yeah, let me give the Bears the points. Oh, they did well today. Suchi is correct, by the way. Thank God Google isn't so aggressive in patenting every line of code for the past 30 years, else the internet would be a shell. Particularly on the AI front. When you realize companies like OpenAI basically got their starts off research papers that were created by Google researchers. Spend them in good health. Yep. Yeah, so it looks like Zscaler did really well. How did GitLab do? GitLab was profitable. That's adjusted. So non-GAAP profitable. So yeah, it looks like a beat and guide up. Still not a big moneymaker right now, which is fine. Spencer, you're a Google beta AI feature. And then how about Asana? Dustin Moskowitz's baby. Looks like a double beat. Did they guide up? Not seeing any guidance. Here's the outlook. Yeah, it looks like they beat, though. Double beat. So yeah, it looks like tonight from an earnings standpoint, the three companies we knew about, GitLab, Zscaler, and Asana, have all beaten. And we know that GitLab and Zscaler have both guided up as well. So yeah, good for them. ChatGPT and Bard tells you almonds are for beta males and vegans. Ooh. Spencer's going to be not so happy to hear that. Almond milk is for DJs. I support. You've heard you can purchase breast milk? I mean, if you know the right people. Right? Spencer will be happy to share some with you. All right, guys. Let's check out what Captain Jin James is doing. See how he's hanging in there. And thank you very much for tuning in. I will catch you all tomorrow. Peace out, my friends. Camel milk is a thing in Australia. You can milk anything with nipples. Well, I have nipples. Would you like to milk me? Anyway, guys, see you all tomorrow. Peace.